that you came to EPI as a successful advisor you're already at capacity. So how the heck are you going to go out and do all this other stuff? I think the best way is use the CEPA designation to understand the full picture and where we're going. Use it to unlock a conversation, and then use it to become masterful at collaboration. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out with one of our longtime partners. Certainly, if you're a financial advisor inside of the EPI community, and not really, you've been doing all kinds of work, Kathleen, around helping the professional advisor become closer to the business owner. So thank you for coming in and spending some time with Team EPI. I had a nice dinner last night, and now we're in the Snider family warehouse inside of the podcast studio, kind of getting out of the boardroom, out of the classroom, and having some conversation. So thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we in the second half of the Exit Is Now podcast season this year, we've split our seasons. The first half was really about how we designed this. I had this keynote in June where it was I got to showcase how we've built a value creator culture at EPI. So we used the first half of the year to have folks that have influenced that journey onto the show, so I can frankly write the keynote and kind of revisit all this journey a little bit. After the Exit Planning Summit, we found that what we're calling right now CEPA activation is absolutely critical. And you've been really a part of that for a long time. And so I invited you on the podcast because you're kind of an early partner for CEPAs in helping them activate themselves and get themselves into the end game. We want to put our CEPAs on the business owner's path, strategy, and plan. And so our relationship has certainly evolved over the years. Again, one of the kind of an early partner for us in what we would call empowering conversations. But kind of talk about that journey a little bit and kind of where we started and where we've come.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was March 2022 and some of our sales leaders had approached me. One of our big clients was looking for a speaker for a family office conference. And at the time, I was on the conference committee for the Investments in Wealth Institute. So they came to me and said, "Who do you know? Who have you seen?" And I ended up going back and recommending you, as you know. And I said, well, this is a private wealth conference. And clearly, a lot of the money in private wealth is with business owners. And I said, but I think we should be thinking beyond this conference. And I think we should think about building out content in this space. Well, I mean, the funny thing is I had no idea what I was talking about, but it sounded good. And they all agreed. And we started conversations with you. And we came to an agreement that we were going to collaborate on some content together, which is a module we call Empowering Business Owner Conversations. And just to be clear, the work that we do is for financial advisors because we're an asset manager.
Yeah.
And as part of that contract, anyone who was going to deliver that content had to get their CEPA designation. So the first group of us went through, our sales leaders, myself, some people on my team, and then you and I were collaborating on the content. Fast forward a couple of months, it's March of 2023, we've launched the content and we're headed to our first summit. So we are a sponsor, we have the booth, we have a speaking slot, all the things.
Yep.
We're all CEPAs, we're feeling good. And we're in the first booth, first serious booth time. And I will tell you that financial advisor after financial advisor, I think they recognized our name, Manulife, John Hancock. They were coming up to the booth like, okay, I know who you are. And they were saying some version of this. So I'm a CEPA. And we'd say, oh, that's great. Congratulations. And they'd say, yeah. What do I do?
Yeah, what do I do now?
What do I do?
Yeah.
And so at first we were like, well, we have this great presentation and this white paper that's approved for your clients. And we have this flyer and checklist. And after a couple of hours of this, we're all looking at each other. There was a lull in booth traffic. And I said, I think we have no idea what we don't know, which couldn't have been more true.
Yeah, sure.
And in those days, you used to do the case study in general session.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're in the case study. That year, there were about 500 people at the conference. I was sitting with a colleague, and the instructions were to turn around and work with the people around you. And we got really lucky. We happened to turn around, and there was an RIA team out of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And they were all CPAs. They were all wealth managers, and they had all gotten their CEPA designations. And they said something to us that changed everything. They said, we spent 8 months building our go-to-market strategy after we got our CEPA designation.
Yep.
And I leaned forward and I said, could you tell us some more about that? Frankly, no offense, we weren't working on the case study.
Yeah.
But what we were doing
we were
was,
like this. Well, that's what it's supposed to spark to,
Right.
to be totally honest.
It ended up being, I think, really critical for the community because that got us to our second, module of content, which is called Developing Your Go-to-Market Strategy, and really talking to advisors about how to activate after they got their CEPA. The first one's more making sense of it. Here's some conversation starters, some ideas about building your team. And then we really dug into very tactical, getting your practice ready.
Yeah, so that has also stemmed. We were kind of talking about this pre-show for our listeners. As we actively start to work through activation on our podcast here and in our work inside of the EPI community, I've kind of summed it into maybe 4 buckets, right? And I think a lot of it's like stems and bleeds all together. One is your approach, and this is probably a part of what you're teaching today. It's like, well, what is our approach with business owners? I find that some CEPAs, what we see, Kathleen, now is that there's 3 types of CEPAs. One, there's CEPAs that are ready to rock, right? They're more veteran advisors. They've been doing this a while. They're confident, so they want the framework of value acceleration. They want some language, but they're ready.
Right.
There's a big chunk of folks that say, well, I have business owner clients, but kind of like those gentlemen that group of people that you met in at the summit in 2023, they go, well, we have clients, but what do I really do with this now? I want to get clearer, gain some clarity, gain some confidence. And then there's an emerging group of new CEPAs, and we opened this up a couple of years ago, those who have little or no business owner clients, but want to start learning how to better work with them so that we can gain business owner clients. So they're kind of varying levels of CEPAs. What we found from there is that we need A, an approach, B, language, C, tools, and D, people. And if you can combine those things together, I really think that we have more wins. We do a really good job, I think, of teaching the end game. What those folks said is, right. I get it now, but how do I get people there? So talk to us about your work and that, how are you building your practice, scaling your approach, having deeper conversations? What are you finding that really works?
Well, so, to your point, the ones who, have been doing this kind of work, but they just didn't have a framework, they were typically very advanced wealth advisors, typically working in private wealth. And so I think the CEPA gives them that framework and the tools and access to the community that may have been missing. I will say, too, that a lot of the broker-dealers are, focusing on this and trying to build out resources within the firms for financial advisors to leverage. That middle group, that's interesting. They've got business owner clients. And what we've learned, the more people we've met through EPI, the more value growth advisors we've met, the more M&A advisors we've met, other types of advisors, is we've learned that a lot of financial advisors are afraid to talk to the business owner about the business.
Yeah.
They're very comfortable in the private wealth space dealing with their assets outside of the business. But they don't want to start a conversation about the business because I don't really know anything about this manufacturing company that builds widgets.
Right.
What am I going to say? Well, how am I going to add value, right? And so the first thing we do is we encourage advisors to not use the word exit in their initial conversations, right?
Yep.
And to dig into the origin story of the business. And, do this over a breakfast or a lunch, and if it's a longtime client and you're feeling a little uncomfortable because you haven't brought it up before, you could literally preface it with, I'm adding more and more business owner clients to my practice. I decided to go out and get additional education and certification so that I could bring more services to all of my business owner clients. But I realized something we've never talked about. Tell me about how you started this business and why. And get into that soft conversation. Right. So, you're a business owner, right? I'm sure you would love to talk about
all day. That's what we always laugh. People coming on the show is like, it's like you get down that rabbit hole. It's an hour-long conversation,
which is perfect. Right?
I know, right?
Exactly you want to really learn about what the passion is, and I think for some people there isn't a passion. It was a way to make money. But for most entrepreneurs and business owners, it started with some sort of passion and some sort of idea, and it's grown into this thing that they didn't expect. And, asking questions about what do they see for the future of the business? What do they hope for the future of the business? And how does that relate to their family and their wealth? And those kinds of questions before you ever talk about exit. And then I think the next logical question is, have you had a valuation done on the business? Because we're going to need that for this financial plan that we're building for you, or this financial plan that we have for you.
Because it's your largest asset.
Right. And that creates the first opportunity to introduce a COI, another professional advisor. So depending on obviously where they are on the spectrum in terms of wanting to exit, because you should know that after you have this nice long origin story conversation, if they're 18 to 24 months from exit, maybe you're going to bring in an M&A advisor. But if they're longer than that, which many of them are, that's a great opportunity to bring in a value growth advisor and introduce that person into the relationship. And then you're off to the races, right? Now you're starting to activate the entire value acceleration methodology and plan. And the financial advisor has a very critical role in that, but their role is not, which many of them don't understand initially, is not to act as a value growth advisor.
Well, let's unpack that, because I totally agree. It's one of the questions that our member experience team take. And for our listeners that are our listeners, you might be this person kind of tuning in, trying to figure this out, right? And so I would agree with you. I think that what unites us together is the framework of value acceleration. But we are still the financial advisor. We're still the attorney. We're still the M&A advisor. We're still the consultant. And so I think what happens is, for folks, we get excited about this new framework and working with the business owner. We can see that by using this, if I can just tweak my language and approach, I'll be able to actually bridge these cool conversations that maybe I've never been able to have before. But then we kind of forget what lane we should be in. And so what's your perspective on that? For me, I always say, look, if you want to open up if you're a financial advisor and want to open up a value growth consulting company, right? Kind of like my dad's was, right? Aspire Management, where there's a whole skill set that my dad has.
Yes.
There's a whole business model that he has. There's a whole tools that he has. And I'm assuming that you came to EPI as a successful advisor you're already at capacity. So how the heck are you going to go out and do all this other stuff? I think the best way is use the CEPA designation to understand the full picture and where we're going, use it to unlock a conversation, and then use it to become masterful at collaboration.
Absolutely. I mean, I cannot tell you how many advisors have requested calls with me, and they've just finished their CEPA. I had this one woman, and she said, okay, so I have set one day a week aside to work on this because they've gotten all the emails post CEPA, right? Yeah, and she's like, I'm evaluating software. I said, whoa, stop. I said,
slow down.
You're not buying any software. First of all, your firm is not going to let you. And she was like, well, what do I do? So the answer to the question is, I'm a CEPA, what do I do? If you're a financial advisor, you're a financial advisor. You do what you always do.
Exactly.
The difference is you are now providing the financial planning and wealth management services to a clientele that tends to be particularly high net worth. So you may need to step up those wealth management services and the way that you deliver them. And the second difference is the team of advisors you're bringing to the table, your COIs. It is different from the COIs you have in a typical wealth management practice, because now you want to have, attorneys and CPAs with M&A experience or coming out of an M&A practice within one of the firms. You want to have M&A advisors, private equity, risk advisors who can help with the buy-sell arrangements and de-risking the business, because most financial advisors are not experts in that. They're going to need to pull someone in.
Yep.
So it's all about this team that you're bringing to the table that you're going to pull in at the appropriate time in the process to do the work that needs to be done. But at the end of the day, you're still a financial advisor. Your firm, if you're an RIA, let me just give a caveat. If you're an RIA, you have a lot more flexibility.
Sure.
But even if you're an RIA, the reason that team that we talked to was doing what they were doing is because they were all CPAs. Again, they had a skill set.
Yes, they had a skill set
that most financial advisors don't have, right? So you are right. They do not have the corporate finance background, the work in growth turnarounds or M&As. They weren't entrepreneurs who built and successfully exited a business. They just don't have the skill sets that these other advisors do, which is fine.
Which is fine. That's what I'm saying. Which is fine. I want the audience that is listening to say that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
Again, the CEPA training that you have gave you a good look and training into the end game, which is we're going to get owners into the methodology, and we're going to be working actively on driving value into our business and aligning business, personal, and financial goals. Let's go back, though, to started talking about the value growth advisor, and since we're kind of focused here on financial advisors, I think the financial advisor and the value growth advisor are like two best friends. Certainly inside of the value acceleration methodology, because they run those two concurrent paths.
Completely agree. We always say it's going to be your most strategic and important partner. Now, we do encourage them to have 2 to 3.
Of course.
Because they're different. They all have different models and the way that they work with clients. And we are happy to introduce financial advisors to our relationships. And we've done a lot of that over the last couple of years. But you should have 2 to 3 different value growth advisors that you can bring to the table depending on the client. You also, as we all know, in the financial services business, it's always better to give 3 introductions and let the client interview and let the client choose who they're most comfortable with and who they want to work with.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the second edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer, backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a CEPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey there, business owners. Are you ready for a game-changing opportunity? Introducing the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report. Over the past decade, this groundbreaking research has reshaped how we view business ownership and exit planning. This report isn't just another study, it's a deep dive into the evolution of business ownership. It shines a spotlight on the crucial intersection of business attractiveness and owner readiness, revealing the undeniable impact of preparation on achieving successful transitions. With younger generations taking the reins, exit planning is taking on a whole new perspective. Education and awareness about preparing for the future have never been more crucial, and with financial readiness leading the charge, there's a clear opportunity for growth and learning. But here's the kicker. The report shows a surge in exit planning education and understanding, yet many still lack formal transition teams, highlighting the essential role of comprehensive support. So who's got your back? Trusted advisors have evolved from CPAs to financial advisors, making a decade of significant change in support networks. Ready to take the next step towards a successful exit? Dive into the Exit Planning Institute's 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Report and start shaping your legacy today. The future is knocking. Are you ready to answer? Discover your readiness level at 2023ownerreadiness.com and take the first step towards a successful and significant exit.
I think that's great advice. And if you're kind of seeing, too, how Kathleen has positioned herself and her firm, is that over those 3 or 4 years that we've built our relationship, you really become kind of a hub for financial advisors. So we've talked about kind of language and approach. Now we're talking about introducing the people component. Let's talk a little bit about your tool, the tools that you offer. Mm-hmm. When I first met you and you were talking about it last night at dinner, you're like the checklist queen, I feel. And it's always super, super beneficial. And the episode before, for our listeners, if you haven't tuned in, go back and listen to Joe Strazzeri's episode. When he started to talk about tools, he talked about checklists. He talked about a simple tool that moves clients, business owners from to hold up, like, wait, what's that? I haven't thought about that. And I think that the other thing that you've created from the education component is tools that advisors can go use with owners that creates action. It's like a motivational content, not just content to be content.
Right. And so we have advisor tools to help them with their practice. Mm-hmm. So in terms of building out their go-to-market strategy, there's an entire presentation in video. You can see it live at a lot of different kinds of events. But there is a workbook that goes with that where advisors and their teams can take the exercises and brainstorm them and create their processes. And then we provide them with editable graphics and visuals that they can go into and literally make their own, change the colors, change the words. They could certainly hire a designer to design their own process if they wanted, like a PowerPoint designer, or any kind of, visual arts designer. But we give them all these sample graphics that they can use, and they can make them their own. In addition to that, we have a guide to, conversations. We have several things that are just for advisor use and for their practices. But where we really have been trying to focus lately is building the tools that they can use with the business owners. So you guys create a lot of great content. The problem in our business is that financial advisors can't use it with their clients.
I know. You got to get it through the compliance.
It's got to go through compliance. It has to have all the appropriate disclosures on it, et cetera. That's what we do all day long. So I'll just share a couple with you.
Sure,
so over the last couple of years, the first 3 years, I think, of our relationship, we were parroting what you said. We were saying that, yes, in the Discover Gate, the financial advisor is going to start to work on and create the plan for life post-exit. We were saying the same thing. About mid-year last year, I said, wait a second. How do they do that?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if you're the business owner that I'm talking to and we're working together on what that's going to look like, I don't have a template to use that's approved. I'm going to create this plan, but now I have to take this plan, and before I can give it to you, I have to put it through compliance and go through all of that. And then every time I do this, I'm reinventing the wheel. So we partnered with Kara Gray of Good Morning Freedom because that is her specialty, right?
Yes.
And we built a workbook that is client approved, and it is a fillable PDF. And I mean, it is a 30,000-foot look at the plan for life post-exit, frankly, but it puts the financial advisor in the conversation with the client on this plan. It gives them a tool to use with them, and the workbook itself becomes the deliverable, so to speak. And it's approved at their firm, so they can use it and they can give it to their clients.
Turnkey.
It's turnkey. And if the client wants to go deeper at that point, I would say that's really not a strength of typical financial advisors, right? If they want to go deeper, they can hire any of these great people who work on personal planning through the API community, whether it's Kara Gray or anybody else. And the business owner can hire them to be a coach and to go deeper.
I want our listeners to see what she just did there, right? So we've talked about this. It's been a theme throughout the last few episodes too. We have this formula that we talk about: intrigue plus empower equals action.
Right.
And so we're not leading necessarily with the technical right out of the gate with the owner. What Kathleen's talking about is leading with some questions to ask the business owner and let them guide the conversation, where we become great listeners as advisors. And what she's leading with that tool that she talked about is that she's intriguing the owner, right? So now the owner's saying, tell me more about that. Now we're empowering the owner with a tool, an active workbook that's now compliance approved. And then eventually what's that going to lead to is action. So now you're really deep, and the owner goes, okay, we need to really put some meat to this. And that's when people come into play.
Right.
And you go, the benefit of you as a CEPA isn't because you became the expert personal planner or the expert business consultant. The beauty and I think the strength of you as a certified exit planning advisor is that you know the pivot point to collaboration. To say, I've taken you here, and now it's time to go into my team of CEPAs that I have that are a part of my network and say, let's bring in Kara, who's an expert personal planner, and she can really round this out for us. And that's her expertise. And I'm going to stay on the financial advisory side.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah. And I mean, a couple other tools. We have a brochure that's client approved for the business owner on value growth advisors. Who they are, what their background typically is, what they do, how they partner with a financial advisor, how to find them, how they get compensated. It's 4 pages. But if it's time to introduce that value growth advisor, the financial advisor now has this brochure that they can use with their client to make that, to explain why they're bringing this person to the table, and then they can make the introduction.
Think about how valuable that is for the business owner, though. To your point, yes, I'm a business owner. And one of the things I look for in my own advisors is that ability. Is the ability to know me, not just the one thing about me, and then to be a great resource for me. When you look at the characteristics of the most trusted and valued advisors, it's that. It's this masterful connection ability to say, okay, I'm thinking it's time that we should consider a value growth person. And I have this small, to your point, 4-page, not intense, not invasive, not time consuming. And this is why I think it's time. And you leave them with a little takeaway, a little reader. And then they I want to follow up with you. I'll call you, later in the week. Tell me what you think. And I just think it's such a cool thing to do. Again, taking approach and language, marrying it with tools, and now marrying it with people. One of the other things that you've been, I think, a critical partner for CEPAs and for EPI is in partnership with Cultivate Advisors. We've been rolling out these immersion events. And so we can talk about approach, language, tools, people, but there's still education that goes around it. Okay, I have all this stuff now. How do I deploy it and use it in the right way? So you've been doing a bunch of in-person, private label type events around the country with your team, Cultivate teams, and EPI. Can you talk to us now about the educational component that comes into it? I guess what I'm framing here, Kathleen, is I'm a financial advisor listening to the show, getting excited. Like, man, I need that, and I need to learn it. So to learn it, you go to these immersion events. Can you talk to us about those?
Sure. Well, the partnership with Cultivate's been amazing for us, and thank you for connecting us and introducing and always putting our booths next to each other at the summit. That's always great.
Very intentional.
We're literally introducing people across the way. But this is actually something that Cultivate came up with, so I don't want to take credit for this. I mean, this is content that they built, and we went to see it. Well, I went to see the pilot.
Yeah.
And there was only 8 of us in the room.
Yeah.
It was all financial advisors, and Casey Clark was delivering it, and we gave a bunch of feedback on it. And then we had people who went to their first session. I went back again with some people from my team for a session last November. And the beauty of what Cultivate built is really the entrepreneurial story that Casey tells.
Yeah.
And the perspective that he brings, having successfully grown and exited a business, as well as growing a very significant business now and being a business owner now, and how financial advisors talk to him. And what tunes him out instantly, one of the things being the word exit, which is why we started saying don't lead with the word exit. So he does an amazing portion of these immersion events that financial advisors just love. I think it really helps them understand more how business owners think. Critical. And what's going to resonate with them. What we do before that is we'll do, depending on the length of the event, we'll either do 1 or 2 presentations. If we're doing 2, we'll do empowering business owner conversations, which is, again, going to just set the stage for the opportunity, introduce the Exit Planning Institute, your research, your process. We're going to talk about building that team of COIs, some initial conversation starters, and then some of the resources we have. Then we'll do our developing our go-to-market strategy presentation, which is where we dig in and get really tactical about your wealth management processes, more on the team, more on the exit planning process, and also revenue opportunities, which is a critical component.
It is.
Because if someone's 3, 5, 7, 10 years from exit and 80% of their net worth's tied up in their business, often they don't have the investable assets for a financial advisor to work with.
Right.
But if they're not embedded with the business owner for a long time prior to the exit, what are the odds of getting that liquidity event and capturing those assets? Low. I mean,
it's low.
Maybe 1%.
Well, you're going to have one of those equations, right? This Neil McPeak has been on the show before. He's a case study that we've been following. Neil had the scenario that you started to introduce. He was not talking to his business owner client. What I find too is that we were, as advisors, financial advisor, non-financial advisors, we treat our business owner clients the same way we treat all of our clients, and they're different.
Quite different.
And so Neil tells the story, and again, we wrote a case on this, is where he wasn't really having business-oriented conversation with his business owner client, and the client ends up selling their company. And he's been a long time, Neil's in business with his father, and he's like, I've been with the firm for years and was your father's client, now I'm your client, and I want to let you know, give you the courtesy to know that I'm selling my company. He goes, oh my gosh, what a great, we should talk about that. He goes, oh, well, it's already happening, and you can keep the wealth that you have with me, right? Like you can manage those assets, but I'm taking the cash from the liquidity event, and I'm going to put it with this financial advisor. So I'm going to have 2 financial advisors. And he's like, what? Like, why? And Neil tells his story. He says, I had no idea who EPI was, nothing about CEPA. And he goes, well, this guy told me he was a business owner specialist. And then he started having all these conversations that you and I have been having over the course of our show so far. And he said he really connected with me. And so he's been working with me now for 2 years. And now my business is sold, so he's getting it. And he's getting those assets. And so it's really relatable to what you're talking about, because I think that's sometimes the frustration that we see in the financial advisors, that they're playing a really long game. And so they're saying, look, this owner's 5 years away from a $50 million sale. How do I stay a part of that path, strategy, and plan for the business owner? You alluded to revenue opportunities. Can you talk about that? Like, what are
Yeah.
some over the course of those 3 to 5 years that I might recognize?
So the big one is the risk mitigation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So those are the insurance sales, de-risking the business. There's a lot of money in that. And as I said, most financial advisors are not experts in this. This is advanced insurance planning. It's quite complex, but most of them work for a firm that has experts in that space that they can bring in. And again, I say to them, it's not enough to know they're experts. You need to have talked to them. You need to have understood how you're going to collaborate together.
Common
You know,
theme.
there might be 15,000 advisors in your firm. What's going to make them return your email and your call? You know, so build that relationship before you need it. So that's a big one. The second one is retirement plans and employee benefits. And again, this is an area where you either have a specialty in your practice on this or you don't. So typically within broker-dealers, there are strategic partners. So you can go to another practice that specializes in retirement plans, as an example. You can partner with them, bring them into the equation. So that can be a revenue source. And then the third, which is not available to everyone, but it is available at most firms today, you can charge fees for your planning work.
Interesting.
And it's very common today for financial advisors to be charging both an AUM fee and assets under management fee for the money that they're managing, as well as different types of fees on the side for different kinds of planning or different kinds of work. Right? Because the more complex your client, the more time it takes. And all of a sudden, that AUM fee model, is that really bringing in enough to compensate for all this planning? So there are ways to bring revenue in. And to stay embedded with that business owner before the big payoff. But if you wait, if you're not having the conversation, if you're not doing the work, you are not going to get the assets.
So we talked about that when we introduced at the top of the show. We said there's kind of 3 styles of CEPAs, right? There's people that are ready. Let's just call them ready to rock, confident, ready, moving to market. There's the people in the middle. So we kind of talked about them as I need clarity. I need to build some confidence, and I think my aha moment, hopefully for our listeners, is like I don't have to do it all. I stay in my lane, be the specialist that I am, change my language and approach perhaps with my business owner, but know that there's a whole world out there for collaboration. The most emerging market, if you've been around EPI for a while now, the most emerging segment of advisors that we see is the young advisor. What's super interesting for us, and it's like for me and my dad, it's kind of like one of those Vern Harnish, like big, fat, audacious goal things where we're finally getting to the colleges and universities. So Seton Hall University is looking at a certificate in exit planning brought to you by EPI. University of Michigan is looking at the same thing. Point being is, prior to us even getting there, we have this younger segment of advisors, 25, 35, maybe even 45 years old, who have not necessarily worked directly with owners, but are looking to. If you look at that group and as a partner for CEPAs, what are some early recommendations for them as they get excited about working with business owners? What would you say to them? Would it be similar to what you're advising that middle group of people?
It is, but here's the difference.
Sure.
The younger you are in the business, the more flexibility you have to really build out an overall approach, right? So
Interesting.
if you've been in the business for 20 years, you're going to have a book, you're going to have a clientele of different clients that you need to serve. Maybe you have a target niche, maybe you don't. But now all of a sudden you want to start another target niche. Well, you still have to service this business, right? And you still have to work on that while you're trying to build this target niche. The earlier you start in the business, you can build a practice around this. So it's doing all the same things that we talked about for that other tier, right? It's developing that go-to-market strategy. It's building out all of your relationships so that you can bring the right advisors to the table. But then it's also going after them specifically because you have a framework to serve them. And you're serving them not just from an exit perspective, but also from a retirement plan perspective, from their risk mitigation perspective, their personal wealth planning. So you can literally build it from scratch almost the right way, so to speak.
True.
And so when I see some of the biggest advisors in this space, and what they're doing, and at this point in time, they are only focusing on business owner clients. They had to go through a pretty painful process where they had to quote unquote fire the other clients, or structure their practice in some sort of way where they were handed off to someone else who was going to serve those private wealth needs. But it's exciting to be coming into this. I think it's great you're partnering with universities. I didn't realize that because there's over 200 universities out there that have degree programs in financial planning. Those are the ones I'd be targeting if I were you.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
to pull this into that process. But I will tell you with the CFP, they will do all of the work, but they sometimes even sit for the exam, but they cannot use the CFP credential until they have a certain number of years of experience. I think it's 5.
Yep.
I've been in the business so long, it's hard for me to remember this. But I think it's 5 years of experience or that they need to have in client-facing work to use it. But that's a really interesting opportunity because we need young people to come into this business. We need them to recognize the tremendous opportunities to work in this business and the tremendous, lifestyle and just life and career that they can build. Yeah. And it's hard to reach them. So I think it's great that you're doing that outreach.
Yeah, it's you'll see it debut later in the year and at the beginning of next year in those 2 universities specifically. But yeah, it opens up like a whole nother path to navigate, let's say, because you're right. We're trying to figure out now. Obviously, the college and university wants those certificate and exit planning courses to lead towards credentialing. And I think I want it too. We want it too, right? To your point,
Right.
I want more qualified professionals in the space. But now we're figuring out, kind of like CFP board had to figure out years ago, is I don't know if you could just graduate college and boom, you're a CEPA. You might know more than the next person because you spent time in college learning it.
Right.
But there's probably a waiting period for you to activate your credential along the way. But you would have access to tools and resources so that you can start to build your activation, gain the experience. So you're still furthering yourself a part of the EPI community. But it's kind of like a wild future for me to think like we have all these highly qualified professionals mixed with all these like students. Like what a cool mentorship peer group community EPI could, I mean, it is today, but imagine now adding super young, when you're 22 years old when you graduate college, right? Like all of those people looking to surround the business owner. That's kind of an interesting community.
Well, and we have as you know, a lot of practice management resources beyond the business owner content, but we do talk about what we call generational intelligence, and we talk about building multi-generational teams.
Yes.
Right? And so one of the ways they have to do that is to embrace and hire this next generation. And we are always telling them to look to the colleges and universities that have financial planning as a degree program.
Yeah,
and if
that's
they're
interesting,
learning CEPA as part of that, then they're starting to understand the enormous potential in that target market before they ever even get into the business, which is amazing because the rest of us are just figuring it out now.
Yeah, I know, right?
I mean,
they can imagine you were like from 22 or from 20 to 22, you were learning the stuff that we're all learning now.
Yeah.
How that would make an impact on the future of business owners and business advisors in the market a decade from now, right?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty interesting because I don't know about you. When I was taking the business, I didn't complete college, as I think we all know, but in my early phases of going through my bachelor's degree, none of the classes I was taking in college taught me anything about exit planning, or none of them taught me about value creation. They might have taught me how to have a strong P&L or what a P&L was, but they didn't tie it to value. They certainly weren't teaching me about business, personal, and financial planning. No. And so now imagine that, again, those college kids are you're learning all of that coming out of school.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's great. It just wasn't an option, right?
It wasn't an option.
It wasn't an option.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And I think I'm happy that the universities are doing this. And it's funny because I had someone on my team recently who got their CFP. And I had said to her, I said, no matter what you do in your life, that credential will help you in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you know things that other people your age don't know.
Exactly right.
About financial planning, about estate planning, about retirement planning. And that's going to set you up for success no matter where you go in your life.
I think you're spot on. And I think it's as we hit the top of the show here, it relates all the way back up to these 3 best-in-class qualities that CEPAs exhibit. And one of them is this purposeful growth. To your point, by gaining that CFP credential or that CEPA credential, it'll set you apart. It showcases your passion for evolving your thinking along the way. It'll always kind of stick with you. Well, you've been a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of tools. And so I would really encourage, we'll have in the show notes all the stuff that you can go do, whether it's an immersion event, whether it's the tools that she talked about, the education that they have. Certainly a big partner with us. And I'm really excited about where everything has gone. It's like the right time. I think the universe has kind of aligned. Yeah. You're kind of an early adopter of this activation model. And as we start to see more CEPAs in the marketplace, we start to see how much they need that first component. It is this activation to get to implementation. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in on the show, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks. For our audience, next show, September 2nd. So please, again, please share the podcast with all of your colleagues, your fellow professional advisors. We're dedicating the second half of the season all to teaching the professional advisor how to activate themselves to put them on the path, the owner's path strategy and plan. Next show, September 2nd. We will see you all there. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.